Compulsory super is set to rise from 9% to 12%. Next month, the Greens and the Independents look set to pass government legislation to phase in the rise over the next decade. Critics are arguing it's only going to benefit the rich and that for many workers the increase will come at the expense of wage rises. Experts argued the toss with the superannuation minister Bill Shorten at a round table in Sydney today, and Stephen Long was there for 7:30.
There is little benefit in working for a long time and retiring poor.
Even at 9%, you could say to people, if you want to take out a certain amount as a housing deposit and you commit to increased super after that of, say, 3% or 5%, whatever you like, why wouldn't we do that?
It was a super debate. The issue, does the money employers have to set aside for workers' retirement savings, compulsory super, need to rise from 9% to 12%, as the government plans? Arguing the toss, Labor and Capital.
Is it a socialist utopia? It's interesting when we've got a superannuation system that's at the mercy of the free market.
People don't go into business because to do super and to collect GST and to do paid parental leave.
The Minister?
I believe superannuation does work. It has worked.
The industry and its critics.
The amount of money that we spend on the superannuation tax concessions is far more than we spend on, is growing to the point it's more than we actually spend on the age pension. People need money for housing.
Eva Cox is a feminist academic and commentator. As a lifelong lefty, you might imagine that she'd be all for making bosses pay an extra 3% towards workers' retirement savings, but you'd be dead wrong.
No, it's not going to benefit low-income earners. It's not going to benefit women who are mainly low-income earners. It's going to be a huge public benefit, public payment to high-income earners and high tax payers who are going to use it as a tax avoidance process. Somebody did refer to it as better than the Bermudas recently.
Her point is the well-paid benefit most from super because it's taxed at a flat rate of 15%, way below the top income tax rate.
So it's a welfare system for rich men, and I think we ought to stop it.
But for lower paid workers, the trade-off for higher super will be lower wages, as employers look to claw back the added cost. A view put by the former Treasury boss Ken Henry in his tax review, which argued against increasing superannuation. Why shouldn't we give people an extra 3% on top of their wages?
We're not giving them, it's their money. We're taking their money out of their weekly pay and we're putting it into a savings that they can't afford. And also it means employers are not going to give them the wage rises because they're going to see it as superannuation instead. So people at the bottom will get paid less and they won't get access to money they need. People at the top will use it as a tax avoidance thing. And the only explanation I can think of why we're still doing this is almost all the people that I know of that are actually making these decisions benefit from high superannuation.
That in 1985, if we'd listened to the naysayers and the unions hadn't foregone a 3% wage rise and put into compulsory savings, and if we had listened to the naysayers and not pushed to 3 to 9% in 1992, we would have retirement income being something which only the very rich could have.
The ACTU, Labor's partner in super, agrees. It's campaigning for 12% and beyond.
Well, ever since the introduction of superannuation in the early 1990s, the trade union movement has always held that to provide an adequate retirement income, 15% of somebody's wages is probably the best figure to actually achieve that.
The ACTU doesn't accept that more super will mean lower pay rises for workers in the here and now.
Well, when superannuation was introduced in the first instance, there was a wage offset of 3%, and that's the one and only time that has ever really happened. All the other increases, up to 9%. There was steady wage rises during that period.
And the unions have got some unlikely allies.
If you asked me to nominate the top 5 social reforms made by any Australian government since Federation, the superannuation guarantee, the industry super fund introduction in 1992 would have to be one of those. And look, I'll concede it was by a government of an opposite political persuasion to mine. The Keating government introduced that.
Thanks very much, Mr. Speaker.
Peter Collins was a leading light of the Liberal Party, a Conservative state treasurer and opposition leader in New South Wales. Now he's on the socialist side of the super debate, an independent director of a not-for-profit industry fund, and a critic of his own party's opposition to lifting the rate of compulsory super.
I think that the 12% is a must-do regardless of who is in government. Think about it. If a coalition government, for example, were to say it's too much of an impost on employers to increase it to 12%, what you're going to see is everybody slugged with additional taxes, perhaps a smaller tax base in the post-baby boom demographic, meeting higher costs of retirement through the age pension.
The former Productivity Commission economist Nick Gruen says that workers should be able to access their superannuation to help buy a house, then pay in more later.
Putting money into a house is savings investment. So it's just efficient to say to people when they're saving for a house that when they've done some saving, they'll be able to take that money, put it in their house and go on saving for their retirement.
When I hear about accessing superannuation so that people can make deposits on their first home and that kind of thing, history shows that all that does is it drives up the price of the housing stock.
There's one certain beneficiary of increasing the pool of money in super, the finance industry.
I think there's an awful lot of people that have got their snouts in the superannuation trough and the government doesn't understand it. Most people in Australia don't understand their super and they think it's a benefit.
Stephen Long reporting.